In this movie, I'll show you how to assign a custom application of brightness contrast as a static adjustment so that you're permanently modifying each and every pixel inside the image. And then in the next movie, I'll show you how to do the same thing using a dynamic adjustment layer. And over the course of the two movies, we'll take these two images of hawksbill turtles, both of which look pretty awful right now, and we'll make them look absolutely great. All right, I'm going to start things off inside this too dark image by first ensuring that I have a pixel-based layer selected, which I do, because after all, it's the static background, which is always made of pixels inside Photoshop. Then I'll go up to the image menu, choose adjustments, and then choose brightness contrast to bring up the brightness contrast dialog box. And then you presumably want to go ahead and start by clicking on the auto button to see what Photoshop comes up with all by itself, which is not half bad, by the way. If I turn off the preview checkbox, you can see that previously the image was dark and murky. And now if I turn preview back on, it's bright, high contrast, and it looks pretty great. But that doesn't mean I need to stick with these values. I might decide that Photoshop is adding too much contrast, in which case I take that contrast value down. I might also decide that the image isn't quite bright enough, in which case I'll increase the brightness value, or if it's too dark, I could decrease that brightness value. Now, something to know about brightness contrast is that these days it's incapable of clipping pixels. And by that I mean it doesn't allow you to clip your shadows to black or your highlights to white. Now, a lot of folks still steer clear of this command because back in the old days, it always clipped pixels. And let me show you what that looks like by turning on the Use Legacy checkbox. When I turn that checkbox on, Photoshop goes ahead and zeroes out the values. And now notice if I crank the brightness up, I'm lifting the luminance across the board. So I'm making the shadows brighter and I'm driving the highlights into white. And if I follow that up by increasing the contrast so I can get my shadows back, then I'm going to blow out my highlights as you see happening here. And this is very dangerous because it means that you have big areas of flat color, which is rarely what you want. Now, we used this checkbox to great effect a couple of chapters ago when we were creating the silhouette of that horse, but that is a fairly non-standard use for this command. If what you want to do is correct an image, then be sure to leave Use Legacy turned off, and then play with the sliders any old way you like. I'm going to go ahead and crank the contrast value up to 100%, which is the maximum setting, and then I'll take the brightness value up too. And note that you can adjust these values just by clicking inside them and then pressing the down arrow key in order to reduce the value or the up arrow key in order to increase the value. You can also press Shift along with the up or down arrow keys in order to move that value in increments of 10. So this is what happens if I press Shift down arrow, and this is what happens when I press Shift up arrow. And then finally, another way to work, in case you're interested, is you can scrub directly on the word brightness or the word contrast in order to modify that value on the fly. And if you want to change this value in increments of 10, then go ahead and press the Shift key as you scrub. And notice that way you'll make big differences with very small gestures. Anyway, I'm going to go with a brightness value of 50 and a contrast of 10, at which point I'll go ahead and click OK to accept the change. And now I'll press Shift F to switch to the full screen mode. And just so we can see the difference we've been able to make, I'll press Control Z or Command Z on the Mac. This is that original hawksbill turtle that I captured in front of the shipwreck on a recent dive. It's a great shot because I managed to get it, but it looks pretty murky. And this is how it looks after a quick and easy application of the brightness contrast command.